Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be streaming. Hello, I am Ray Thomas. I'm one of your co hosts for Becoming Awesome, and we have a great show for you today. Something I'm really proud of and honored to be a part of. We will be focusing on our affinity group, Warriors at Amazon. This is for our veteran community here at AWS. So, really excited about the guests that we have on. And you know what? Let me turn it over to Jenna to welcome everyone else as well.
Welcome, everyone. And we especially would like to know if there are any vets out there or anyone in the service that's joining. Please let us know so we can say thank you. Thank you so much for your service. This is becoming awesome, as Ray said. Ray, what I'm realizing is that everyone's awesomeness is very different.
Yeah.
So, no pressure, David, in the green room there, but we are really excited to get to know what your version of awesomeness is. And I'll turn it over to Kevin, who's going to be leading that discussion. And digging for it. And we'll follow up as well with some probes. Going to get to the root of that awesomeness, I
Yeah,
guess
thank
is
you,
the
Jenna.
point.
Yeah, David's a guy that's going to be pretty easy to find out why he's awesome here, and his journey here is pretty incredible. And I was lucky enough to work with him through his hiring process, and and he was just a model candidate because he really just embodied our leadership principles from the get go, and then took all my advice and built on it, and did his own research and really put the effort in, and showed why he is a great asset here. So I want to introduce David Sperry. He's a a customer solutions manager from the Federal Financials Group here at AWS. David, how you doing?
Hey, very well. Really honored to be here. Fan of the show. I know I definitely watched this as I was getting ready or really making my decision if I wanted to pursue working here, and so it's an honor to be back in this involved with the show.
Yeah,
That's great.
great. Yeah, no, and I think I mentioned you're part of the Federal Financials Group, which is interesting. Because you do come from an Army background, and I know a lot of times folks that are either veterans or transitioning out of the military feel like their options are limited to working. Go through your journey to that, your transition to working outside of the armed forces, and in that aspect.
Yeah, and I think the bandwidth may have got you for a moment there, Kevin, but I think I got the gist of your question. So my background is definitely probably not the most traditional, and it's definitely served me well here at AWS, and definitely been celebrated. So very from a very small town in Pennsylvania, the army was my ticket to see the world, and I absolutely did. I enlisted straight out of high school, and got a chance to serve all over the world, living in Europe, getting deployed to places like Afghanistan. Um, and my specialty was actually military police. So not the traditional pathway into enterprise IT, but I had some cool experiences along the way that really helped me understand, like, why did I like certain parts of the army more than others, and what did I have a natural skill set towards. Like, recruiting. I was a recruiter in a very affluent community outside of New York City that everyone said was going to be like the most challenging and really hard to do, and I ended up really thriving there, and really helping people find their successful path in the army as a recruiter. And it turns out recruiting is really just sales, in the army. Um, and I had some other experiences overseas that there's just nothing to prepare you for. Like, in Japan, I led law enforcement and security for the army on the island of Okinawa, and I had a very large workforce of local national employees that were government of Japan employees in actually unionized employees, and that was my workforce to do all this security work with. So you just figure that out. You make yourself a perpetual student. And then my last position in the army, I taught at a university. I taught at Virginia Military Institute, VMI, and this thing called the pandemic hit, and there's not, a huge manual on like how do you teach infantry tactics to 300 college students remotely. Like that book doesn't exist yet. And so those are the kind of stories that I got to tell when I was coming into AWS about just figuring that stuff out. And I think that's been really, a lot of the keys to success in this current role, where I'm a customer solutions manager. And I guess just to put a bow on it, my day to day here is really, I have one large federal financial customer, and I work on a team, and my role is really enabling their cloud migration, ideally faster. And that's my favorite like one sentence way to put it, because other than that, like that gives me a really broad spectrum to work in, really broad left and right limits, as we would say in the military. And that's really what lights me up, is the ability to, figure out where in that left and right limit I need to be successful.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And first off, thank you for your service. And I genuinely mean that because, I'm Afghan. So I went to Afghanistan, in 2005 and 2008, once it was a lot safer thanks to our military and the military from the rest of the world that was supporting us, right? So first off, thank you. And I met some of our military folks, and even our family had helped and served with the U.S. military there. So first off, thank you for that. Second, I just want to quickly tell everyone there's some weird Wi-Fi issues that are happening. So if Kevin's stuck, or if I get stuck even, here in New York City, there's a lot of, with the return to office, and there's a lot of moves with the new buildings. There's a lot of different weird Wi-Fi stuff happening. So if we get stuck, we will come back, just FYI. So just want to quickly mention that. And I think, Jenna, you had a follow-up question for David.
Yeah. Well, also, David, thank you, of course, for your service. I am also a 9/11 survivor and a military spouse. So I understand the sacrifices that you have made. And I appreciate you got dressed for the occasion with your military shirt. But back to business here. I'm really interested in just drawing the connection, connecting the dots on um, just how your leadership skills have served you here. And I feel like I got a little bit of a glimpse on that with your recruiting example, or scaling example. But maybe even when I think of the military, I think of operational excellence and, you know, um, no time to fail. So, how do you apply those concepts and again, leadership in your role or just in this Amazon ecosystem in general?
Yeah. I I think I'll focus really on the leadership part of that, question, because I think one of the big misconceptions that maybe people have about looking at hiring veterans is that, one or two things: either that I'm gonna have to maybe tell them, be very prescriptive with them because they're used to receiving orders, or they're not going to be potentially successful. Interacting with peers who they can't order around. There's a hyper focus on the orders part of the military. And I think even in my last two kind of military positions, there's a lot of examples that I pulled from there to address that, kind of proactively in my hiring process, where there's only so much direction you can give to foreign national employees in a labor union. Like you can't exert hard power in that type of environment. It's all influencing and showing people you care, building genuine relationships, and consensus building. Um, and those are the kind of stories that I was able to tell, and engaging with local Japanese leadership in the island of Okinawa, to kind of be good partners and good neighbors in that community. And then, have you ever tried to order a 21-year-old college student to study how to do an ambush? Like, it doesn't work super well. Like, you have to show them why they should care, align with them, and guide them along. Um, and I find to do a lot of that stuff here. We have a large team, and there's not really like a leader. There's people who are higher in the organization, but we don't have like a defined leader, and we all do what they say. And it's the same thing with the customer. I can't tell the customer what to do. I have to kind of illustrate why it's probably a good idea to do this, or listen to them when they're not going along with that. Um, and it actually kind of surprised me because we obviously have different levels here at Amazon, and I think I'm the lowest level person on our sales team. And one of my peers kind of called out in our internal accolade system about my leadership, and I was like confused because I had this pre-existing leadership model in my mind of like, oh, high rank does leadership. And I was kind of guilty of my own stereotype for myself, I guess. And I realized that I was exerting that same kind of influence and more soft power to really guide things than a more traditional top-down approach.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
one thing I hear, when you tell these story, telling that story is the vast array of responsibilities and duties and stuff that may not necessarily be easy to put down on paper. And I know as a recruiter, one of the things I work with hiring managers on a lot is that we have to sift through a veteran's resume or transitioning military member's resume a little bit deeper and kind of understand what they're actually doing, or even take the time to have a candid chat with them to find out, because it may not be as cut and dry as I did X, Y, and Z at X company. So can you just go over that process about trying to quote unquote civilianize your resume, or just the entire hiring process with trying to make sure that folks that like myself who never served in the military understand what you actually did, and your skill set that you learned along the way, not so much taught at a specific university or something.
Yeah. So great question. Because it's definitely a dichotomy. Because I've seen both sides of that equation. I've seen the veteran who wants to be very authentic to what they did, and they're going to put down to like the exact name of the unit they were in and like their exact nomenclature of position versus summarizing it or like blending together two logical positions. They don't feel comfortable making those leaps. And then I've seen the other side of the spectrum, and I've definitely did this too in some of my earlier versions of my resume. Is I went too far away and people were confused again. They're like, wait, I thought you were in the military. Who does customer success in the military? And so it is a hard dichotomy. So there's not a lot of like black and white answers to give. The best thing is to calibrate to the, I think, employer, where I'm where I am today because of a lot of other veterans who are in the affinity group that I'm a member of now. I was showing my resume to them. I was getting advice from them of like, hey, does this resonate? Does this resonate? If you read this cold, do you know what I mean by this? And I think that's probably the overarching piece of advice is, mm, you have to calibrate your resume to the specific employer. And Amazon is definitely a very unique hiring process that you really need to double down on that on.
Yeah, yeah. Like I know there's a lot of mentorship programs or fellowship programs. Like I know we work closely with Hiring Our Heroes, which I know you didn't come through that program necessarily, but I know you're familiar with it as far as the 12-week fellowship. It really lets you get real world experience while you're transitioning out of the military. You know, these programs, as far as they're concerned, are there any that you have a closer tie with, that that you have an affinity for, or that you see success with, that you want to shout out?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I did not come through the Hiring Our Heroes program, but if you're a veteran, still serving, and I would really recommend looking at it. I would say that's probably the lowest friction path in, or we'd say the path of least resistance. Not to say it's easy, but it's at least there's a pathway there to follow. And good people like Kevin and other recruiters who are able to make those translations. So hiring a hero is definitely worth looking at, also for spouses, not just veterans,
Yep.
but veteran spouses, for sure. um, and then the group that I'm really involved with is Veterati. I think we're going to drop a link to the Amazon specific Veterati page, but it's VET. I'm going to embarrass myself trying to spell live, but VETERAITI. Anyway, you'll put it in the chat. I can't spell. Someone can make an army joke in there, please. Um, but So Veterati is really cool, where veterans and people who are seeking employment, like mentees and mentors, both make profiles on there. And it could be people from any stage of their life, as long as they're a veteran or a veteran spouse, and enables you to really connect with people who have already said they want to help. On LinkedIn's great, but you have to go through more steps. You have to find the person, ask if they'll talk to you, find out when. But Veterati, like, I'm a mentor in there, and you can literally look on my calendar and pick a time, Tuesday at 4 o'clock, and you click it and it locks it in on both of our calendars. And then at Tuesday at 4 o'clock, it calls both of our cell phones and networks us together for 1 hour. And then we leave reviews about each other. Like, it's such an efficient marketplace. And I know Amazon is a partner with Veterati.
Robert
That's
Tables, I'm with you. I just
Yeah.
put it up there. I didn't know about it either until we met David. So I'm glad he shared that.
Yeah, and I see you have on your LinkedIn profile, you talk about Verity. So maybe we should also put David's LinkedIn profile in the chat so people can see that and see a little bit more about David. But actually, what's most interesting to me on there is I also see you have a note that says, I am also a believer that many veterans and other service minded professionals have the core abilities required to make even larger impacts in emerging technology. Those are your words, David. So may I ask you why?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the core tenets, to use an Amazon word, that we had in the military as well as Amazon, is diversity in all its different meanings, right? You have diversity of people, you have diversity of ideas. Generally, with diversity of people, you get diversity of ideas. Like, that's one of the big benefits of it. And so, not having a huge enterprise IT background, okay, you could view that as a negative, but it's also going to be a positive, in that someone could learn enterprise IT, and then bring with them a whole other kit bag or skill set of experiences. It's a new lens to view things through. And I really felt valued from my team, actively soliciting my opinion. Might not always be right, and my ratio has hopefully been getting better. But they've wanted to know, like, hey, you have fresh eyes. What does this look like to you? Why is this not working? What could we do to make this go better? um, and veterans are a group of people. We recently had our public sector summit in DC, and I can't resist event planning. I think wedding planning may have been a possible alternate career for me, because in the military, especially as a leader, like, you just plan all these events. There's no one to do it for you. You just figure it out, and then you scrutinize it to look at every possible thing that could go wrong and make a plan against that. And so I just naturally gravitated toward event planning, and the people who were actually running it are like, "Hey, yeah, is this something you'd like to do?" I'm like, "Not really, but it's something I can do, from the military." And that was how I was able to add value in that moment. So I'm down. So you never know, like, all those different aspects of your background that are really going to pay huge dividends.
That's
You could
awesome.
always also join the recruiting team also if you
That's very true.
decide that wedding planning isn't right for you and you
At least with CSM, you get a bit of everything too, huh?
Yes,
point.
yes.
Yeah. So speaking of that, like, how did you make the decision? What was your process to make the decision to come over to Amazon?
Yeah. So kind of the first step on the path, honestly, was like a assignment I had a while ago. I mentioned I was a recruiter. Um, so shout out to any recruiters that are still out there. If you're in a tough market, one day it'll actually benefit you. But I was in Morris County, New Jersey. I'll throw it out there. I think it's on my LinkedIn. It is a very affluent community. It's a bedroom community of New York City, and there's a low propensity to join generally. And it was at the peak of both the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and I thought I was going to hate it. Like, I was coming out of what I thought was my dream job in the Army. I did, like, cool, like, plainclothes military police investigations, and, like, oh man, I thought I was so cool. And now I'm going to have to leave that and go be a recruiter in this horrible market that's not going to pay off. And I ended up loving it. It was like my favorite time in the Army, because I had complete autonomy. It was, hey, here's a car, here's a phone, here's a computer. Go put people in the Army every month for 3 years. Don't mess it up. And, like, that was wonderful for me. So as I was reflecting back on my experiences, that kept jumping out as like some of the happiest times I've had in the Army. So I thought I wanted to be in sales. I talked to a lot of account executives, people in software sales, and people even in sales at AWS, and it wasn't a total fit for me. And then I learned about customer success kind of as a function, everything post sales really, and an enduring engagement relation management. And then I learned, even further about customer solutions, kind of our version of customer success. And it was really then, like when I got a lot of clarity around what I wanted to do, that I shaped my LinkedIn page. Like if you look at it now, it's really still uh, garnered towards customer success. Like how would I view all my experiences through the lens of customer success? And once I got to that point, that's honestly when Kevin found me. Because I think my read on it, and Kevin can correct me, is that I started broadcasting on a frequency that people were actually listening on, and like I was speaking in a language that people would understand. Um, and so that connected me with Kevin. And then when I learned it was not DoD, I was honestly even more excited because I wanted to broaden. Like I wanted to get some more additional experiences under my belt. Who knows, one day I might come back and try and serve the DoD in some way, but for now I'm really excited to broaden and go deep in another vertical.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here, David. You have talked about this recruiting job twice. So I think that you were pretty passionate about recruiting and really enjoyed winning over the hearts and minds of others. So, can you give the audience a quick pitch on why they should consider applying for a CSM role at Amazon?
Yeah, absolutely. um, so when I was coming in here, like this is kind of full circle with the affinity group. So on my way in, like once Kevin talked to me, where we kind of last left off, Kevin had found me. Between Kevin finding me and then like actually getting on the phone with him and like starting the interview process, I reached out to 8 veterans within our affinity group at Amazon. Not no hyperbole, actually 8 within the course of about 5 days. And I just read so much into that. I was able to get a hold of 8. There was so many more that I had lots to choose from, and I picked 8 that looked like a good representation. They were all able to give me 30 minutes of their time with almost no notice, and I was just so blown away by the caliber of these people that I was talking to, that they seemed to have enough autonomy over their schedule that just to talk to me about being them. And like one of the main things that I kept hearing was, this is one of the least well-defined jobs you'll ever find. And so to circle back to answering your question succinctly, Jenna, it is one of the least well-defined jobs you'll ever find. And I love it. Um, so to kind of go back to what I say I do, I enable my customers cloud migration journey, ideally faster. So that could be anything. So next week I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to go to a West Coast city and do 3 days of workshops and training. And it's because I decided that would be a good idea, and I talked to my account team and we all kind of agreed on a game plan. That sounds awesome to me. So if you enjoy some sales, some tech, and you have just a real passion just to figure things out, it's a heck of a great job.
I like that. We're gonna make a short of that.
I like that a lot too. So one quick
Thank you.
follow up. Yeah, one quick follow up, David. What was the most surprising aspect when you started onboarding here? Like, what was positive? What may be negative? What's anything you want to share?
Oh gosh. All right. So the free office supplies blew my mind. Okay. Um, so like with while I was still onboarding, I got a chance to go to Seattle. We had like some big event, and I'm walking down the hall and I see all these completely unguarded like highlighters and pens and aspirin, and I'm like, you know, because like normally all that stuff lives behind cages in military context, and I'm like, you have to sign for it. I'm like, this is all free. So that was really exciting for me.
Did you get
Um,
your headset from the vending machine?
Oh yeah, well actually, and I broke that one, but this is a replacement. But just even little stuff like that, right? So I go to the West Coast a lot, and I noticed some of the planes didn't have power. So I slacked my manager, "Hey, I need a power bank," and they're like, "Cool, expense it." That would have been so much more of a process, in my previous life. Um, So yeah, and then I guess surprising. The last thing that I would add on that is like I had some naive notion that the pace of learning might slow down, that like I might know enough, but now I just keep learning different things. It's like very analogous to being a parent. You think like parenting is going to get easier, and it just changes. And now I'm not done learning. I'm just learning different stuff and
Yeah.
more and faster. Um, so I'll end it there, I guess.
Awesome. It's funny, like I can connect with you on the medicine cabinet because that blew me away. Like on each floor, you had multiple, anything you could think of. Your head's hurting, your stomach's hurting. You need band-aids. Everything on the planet is in this huge chest, and you just grab what you need, as many as you need. So that kind of blew me away. And we have a few minutes left. I know Jenna, you wanted to bring up. Let's bring up some fun stuff.
Oh, I'm not prepared, but I guess
I got
I'll.
one.
What
Good.
about
I got one, Jenna.
favorite place to your favorite tour in the military?
Yeah, well, so I think I was very lucky being stationed in Japan. Timing, was amazing. Where I was there, right before the pandemic for the 3 years, so I had 3 years to travel around. I was very lucky, and Taiwan really blew me away. Taiwan was just amazing. I always say like the people were so nice there. All you had to do was like look dumb and like be looking at your phone, and people will come up and help you and just try and get you where you're going. And like the food is amazing, the culture is amazing. So I had a blast in Taiwan. I went there multiple times.
I know you're on the federal financials team, but you do have a couple other veterans on your team. Does it ever in your time, or at least I know you've been through one football season, does it get a little contentious with the Navy guys? I grew up within an earshot of West Point, so I'm a go Army, be Navy guy, just for sheer proximity. But do you guys get into that game as much as it seems?
Yes, we have a lot of fun on our broader team within federal financials. We actually have quite a few veterans, and it's really a lot of fun to deliberately mislabel them. I'll introduce my colleague as being a former Air Force pilot, and I know very well that he was in the Navy. Hey, all the same. So it's a lot of fun.
Oh my
Yeah, yeah.
God.
I always love that. It's the lightheartedness and the camaraderie that it almost seems. It truly does seem like I grew up with a brother, and that it's never stopped. I'm 39, he's 41, so and it's still the same way. So I love seeing that between the branches and my friends that have served in various branches.
I like the color green over blue anyway, so I'm a fan.
Yeah,
Air Force and Army and Marines.
yeah, you hear that, Eric Waldo? All right. Anyway.
And for the viewers out there, if you've never had a chance to get to a game up at West Point, it's truly one of the best things you can see, best football atmospheres you'll ever see in the country. Quick plug, I guess, for West Point football.
I got one quick last question before we have to wrap it up. So I know you mentioned like Taiwan and everywhere else, and I know Afghanistan was nowhere near the same type of experience given everything we went through. My question is, did you have any of the kebabs there? Because again, my family and I, we are huge into kebabs, and just want to see what your experience was like.
Yes, I've definitely been involved in things that goats were brought along as part of the meal plan, and that the goats were then invited to dinner, and we participated. Um, so yeah, the food was I had really good experiences with the food, and we'd be on a checkpoint all day, and someone would go and we go buy naan, or we go buy the the, the Afghan version of naan, and it was
Yeah,
delicious food.
yeah,
Any
awesome.
favorite souvenirs that you've picked up along your journey?
Um, yeah, I think I got I have a lot of the money from the previous regime. I
Mm.
think before the Taliban fell the first time. I think a lot of that money was sold to the Americans as souvenirs. But that and a lot of great photos and memories.
Nice. Keep them
Well,
close to your heart, and thank you again for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
yes, yes. Thank you so much, David. Absolute pleasure having you on the show. Kevin, great person to bring on the show, and thanks for leading the conversation. Jenna, amazing as always. Thank you, everyone that watched. We will share the link for the broadcast later on other social platforms. But again, thank you again, David. We'll hopefully meet up soon one day. All right, take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.